So the first parent to talk today, and you might say to celebrate her child's recovery, is Julia Burley from Pasadena, California. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody. It's beyond a privilege and good fortune to be here. And believe me, there is not one iota of my being that doesn't recognize that fact. I'm going to try and go quickly. It's hard to cover 7 years in 10 minutes, but I'm going to go for it. The first thing we noticed with Baxter was diarrhea, incessant, constant, bright yellow, eating away at his skin liquid. This happened between 12 to 18 months of age after the MMR and the chickenpox vaccination on the same day. So the first thing that I found through long about discovery was the gluten and casein-free diet, and for Baxter this was huge. 2 weeks of withdrawal, screaming at the top of his lungs. He had no language at the time. He had more language at 12 months than he did when I put him on the diet, and he was screaming his version of bagel, 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 I want bagel, 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 bagel. And I mean, you all know, right, this level of frenetic energy that our children can have. And I stayed the course. I hated every single minute of it. And at about the 2 to 3 week mark of pulling his crack, I saw language again. I saw vocal approximations of, he called me, at 12 months of age, I was mama. At 2 weeks after the diet, I was nah. That's more language than I'd had in about a year and a half, so that was okay with me. So here's a resource for you if you haven't found it yet, www.gfcfdiet.com. But the diet was profound for Baxter. Day of diagnosis was a bad day, the worst day of my life. I worked as a special education teacher, and my knowledge, my education of autism was, it's unrecoverable. It was the nail in the coffin for me, and even on the back of my head, all these months I was feeling, wow, he's probably got autism. Anything but autism, anything but autism. But so I was told, he was virtually 2 years behind socially, 2 years behind linguistically, and I was told he would never, prepare yourself, Mom. He's probably never going to talk. He's probably going to need a special school. He'll never, diapers for the rest of your life. And there is no cure for autism. Managing my expectations of how Baxter's going to live his life. As awful as that was, that ended up being a gift in my life, because I got so angry and ticked off that I was just going to prove the world wrong and fix my kid. And so that ended up being something that was fortunate. Hate showing you this, hate this, but there's the autism checked, and I can remember at the time hating it, that it was like, not even just once, it was really kind of dark. Okay. You can't be 2 years behind, even with biomedical intervention. I think you can't be 2 years behind and not need therapy. I think therapy is very important. This is some of the therapy that Baxter utilized. At the height of his recovery, he had 54 hours of therapy a week, including school. These are some of the things that we tried. I'm sure you're all quite familiar with the list. They all worked in some capacity for him. And autism spectrum disorder is called we use the puzzle piece. Nobody's kid is the same. Nobody's kid is going to respond to all these things. So I don't really need to go into what specifically worked for him. You have to talk with your doctor and learn about your child and find out what could specifically work for your puzzle piece. GFCF helped him a lot, definitely, but I was still seeing a lot of gut inflammation, still diarrhea, better, but not perfect. And it's at this point, I didn't understand. GFCF does not really heal gut inflammation. I did not know that for the 2 years that we first tried it. It avoids offensive proteins, but it doesn't really heal. So it's at this point I found SCD, which hopefully at this point you've heard a little bit about. And it was really, really helpful for him. You see on the next slide, once he acquired language, he was really a scripter. And the most dramatic thing I noticed from SCD was that scripting was gone. He graduated from occupational therapy, and poops, we all talk about poops in this community. Poops, we got some trophies at this point, 6 months. And here's a slide that will show you a pre-test and a post-test of gut inflammation. Lysozymes are indicative of gut inflammation. You can see that his first test at the time of diagnosis, 5 times out of the range of normal. 5 times. 6 months of SCD, it's 607, slightly at the high end. That's 6 months of SCD. So this was profoundly important in terms of his gut healing. He's a Mercury kid. I'm a Rogam mom. Okay, if you haven't seen that, I love that. You can't open a bottle of thimerosal without a hazmat suit, but somehow injecting it into our children is okay. I don't need to say any more on that. He had lots of mercury exposure. I had 10 dental fillings. I got one while I was pregnant, ate a lot of tuna. Rogam mom had a lot of mercury in it back in 1999. His first set of shots, he got acute pyelonephritis, which is a kidney infection. So he was ill, and then you start the antibiotics, which increase the toxicity of thimerosal. And then he got a quadruple live viral load, and he's kind of textbook mercury poisoned autistic child. We did a test. At this point, he hadn't had a shot or any kind of mercury exposure other than environmental in 3 years. So you can see how high his mercury level is there. We started chelating him with transdermal DMPS. 7 months after starting, this is not typical. 7 months after starting, he lost the label, and there is the proof of that. He no longer qualifies to receive special education services as an autistic child. That was a great day.